All right, all right. That was a little bit louder than I thought it was going to be. So I hope I didn't blow anybody's speakers on or got all kinds of attention for you at the office. So how's everyone? I am RayVeal, and I'm trying this thing out that I'm calling the launch. I just came up with that like I think yesterday or the day before, and I did the graphics and everything. It's sort of a way to talk about sort of my new releases. I release a course about once a month on LinkedIn Learning. So I thought, let's try having like a launch party. I am simulcasting to YouTube, LinkedIn, of course, and also I think Periscope, but I'm not too sure about that because I don't use that very much. So make sure that you take the time to write me a comment, tell me where you're from, tell me your thoughts about what I'm doing, and also ask questions. I can pull up questions that people ask here. So that is pretty awesome. So I can say, pull up, hey, nice to see you, Doug. How's everyone? Wow, Kenya. So we have a lot of people from everywhere. And I'm super excited. So I just want to give you a little bit of background, and let me set up my slideshow here. So essentially, I do a course about once a month, and I have done the Bootstrap courses for several years. I love Bootstrap. I've got the shirt. And it's a really fun library and framework for building websites super quickly. Tailwinds, though, has really come in and I don't want to say destroyed, but really made an impact in the industry. And it's really become super popular. And so I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why that is. And also, give you my opinions as to when you should use which. And I will declare a winner because I really don't like it when people, have which one's the best, and then they don't tell you which one they think is the best. But I do think that you'll learn a lot from everything about it. We're going to focus mostly on Tailwind. I am kind of assuming that you might know Bootstrap a little bit better. So let's get right to it. So Tailwind CSS, what is that? So this is really a framework or a library that takes a new approach. It's really what you would call a library because it's really focused only on the CSS part of building websites. So it takes what they call a utility-first approach. And that means that you can create an entire site that looks pretty good and very unique without writing a single line of CSS. So maybe asking, how is that different from Bootstrap? Well, Bootstrap focuses more on components, like buttons and slideshows, like the carousels and all kinds of other things, whereas Tailwind is really just the CSS. So that's one of the main differences when you work with Tailwinds. You're not getting any JavaScript to work with at all. That means that you don't get some of the functionality, but you get just a lot more flexibility. So let's take a look at what I mean by utility first. So utility first means that you can, and the best place to go is just to go to the website and you can see kind of a sample of how they're working with it. And you can see that as you add different classes, it builds out the layout or the design of your piece. And you have a lot of different classes that are, for example, the size of an element like this one right here, whether you want an element to have round edges, and then things like padding and space. This is actually kind of similar to Bootstrap, but they are very different, and we'll see that in just a minute a little bit more. So that's what utility first means. You don't really need, you don't have components, but you get a ton of classes, just a crazy amount of classes that help you build the websites and designs super quickly. So I really do like this new library. It is an extremely rich library. So unlike Bootstrap, it has a lot of options for just about everything. So let me go ahead and show you an example of what that's like. So for example, when you set the width in Tailwind, here's all the different options that you have for just the width of an element. So you can see that you can divide the classes that are available to you. So you actually add a W and then a dash, and then you include one of these sizes. They can be like 0, 10. So first you put a size 10 here, W10, and that would make that element 10 sort of units of width. The units don't necessarily translate to anything. Everything is based on root ems. So actually, it depends on which one you choose. You can see that there are some that are sort of hard-coded sizes from 0 to 96, and then there are some that are fractions. So you can say, I want this to take up half of the width of the container, for example. And then there are some kind of names that make sense. Auto pixel means a single pixel. And then you could say full, take up the full sort of space. The screen is the width of the screen. And then min max, just like you would with any other sort of frameworks. You can see a lot more options. And this is just for the width. You'll also see these numbers just about everywhere. So you have font sizes, weights, colors, and every one of those is just as rich. Like the options are just as rich as what you see here. So, you know, we have lots of other things. Let's go ahead and I'm going to hide this thing and go to this code pen just to show you the options here. So you can see, like if I showed you the options, here's what the different sizes actually translate to in this browser. I think it will depend on the browser that you're using, but this is a crazy amount of options just for determining the sizes of things, right? Just the width, actually. And like I said, it does, you know, all other properties also use these same sort of numbers. So you'll see them throughout. So very rich. Okay, the disappointing thing is that there are no components. So it actually takes quite a bit of classes to just create something like a button. You have to add a lot of classes to just build what you would consider, you know, something that you would do with a Bootstrap with BTN and BTN primary, say. 2 classes in Bootstrap, it will take you probably like 10 or more classes in Tailwind, but it's just a lot more flexible in that manner. All right, so let's talk about Bootstrap a little bit really quick. Bootstrap is fantastic for very quick scaffolding. Like you install a script and a link tag and you get a pretty good designed website that you can use right away. And with a minimal amount of classes, the classes are structured with names that kind of make sense depending on the component types. So it's really designed for just building something quick. You know, you have things, for example, like here's a sample of just a little page or something that I made with Bootstrap. And if you haven't seen it before, you can see that it has classes for like navigation. It has classes for like links. It has classes, you know, this is the Bootstrap 4. So it has classes for like a Jumbotron, which is a layout that's not available in Bootstrap 5. And you can see that you have just a regular number of classes. All these things would just take a crazy amount of classes in Tailwind. So Bootstrap's a lot quicker. It does have a lot of useful styles. It has a lot of built-in components for making things like cards, modals, navigations, carousels, and a tons more. So this is actually one of the advantages that it has over Tailwind. So Tailwind comes with nothing, no components. Bootstrap comes with lots of components, but Tailwind just gives you a lot of richness in what you can do. In addition to that, as I mentioned, there are built-in components. So besides having things like buttons, it comes with the JavaScript you need to make some of these components interactive. So that's one thing that you don't get at all with Tailwind. It is just the CSS. Things like drop-downs, modals, carousels, they all work without you having to write any JavaScript yourself. And as a matter of fact, with Bootstrap, you get a bunch of classes that activate some of the JavaScript. So you rarely have to actually work with any kind of JavaScript in Bootstrap unless you want to customize things. And like I mentioned, the interactivity is kind of built in. So that's really a big advantage of Bootstrap. All right, so one thing that is also pretty different about the two is how you install them. So with Bootstrap, you have a simple CSS link, and all you do is include that link to the CSS, and you get the styles that Bootstrap has and all the components and all that. You can also add a script tag, and the script tag will give you access to all the interactivity. So when I'm building things like React projects or Vue projects, I tend to use just the CSS part of Bootstrap because I already know it, and I'm just focusing on building like an app. So just those two things will get you what you need to get started with Bootstrap. Now, if you do want to customize Bootstrap, then you are going to want to use Sass. Sass is for more advanced users. It does require a build process. So you need to have something like Gulp or Rollup or Snowpack or Webpack or something like that that's going to process the Sass, or just a straight NPM will process the Sass and allow you to customize Bootstrap a lot better. You can kind of get rid of things that you're not using, but it's a very manual process compared to something like Tailwind. All right, so let's take a look at the Tailwind install. That is a little bit different. Now, they do offer a link to, just like with Bootstrap, you can actually put a link tag and it links to the CSS, but it's not recommended that you use it that way because it's really not designed to just be a link to some CSS. I downloaded the link to the CSS, and it's about, I think it was like 2.8 megabytes. So it's substantially much bigger, that particular link, than something like Bootstrap. It's because it has all those additional classes in the CSS, it's just more massive than Bootstrap. But that's not really the way that you work with it. So essentially, Tailwind is what we call the post CSS plugin. If you've ever used something like auto prefixer to take care of adding the prefixes to support all the browsers, Tailwind works exactly like that. So it does require a build process. And that means that you are going to have to be a more advanced user in order to work with it. Also, you want to work with a build process because that's how you get access to all the actually cool features of Tailwind. You don't want, trust me, you don't want to use Tailwind with just the script tag unless you're, with just a link tag, unless you're perhaps just doing a demo or you're maybe doing a code pen, which is what I've done for my course. So let's see. Some more stuff about Tailwinds. As I mentioned, a ridiculous number of classes. I think I already showed you this link, but it's got a ton of classes for just about everything. This is, again, the sizes, and all of them are like this. It's just what I call just a ridiculous amount of classes. So for the width, you have a ton, but then also for like the height, just especially like the padding classes, the margin classes, way more options, which actually just makes it easier to customize, I think, because what you do in Bootstrap is you usually, take that link tag and you add the CSS to your project, and then you spend a lot of time overwriting things that you don't like. Whereas Tailwind is almost, you do not want to use Tailwind without any classes. The document literally looks like I think like 16-point sans serif font, and that's it. That's all you get. Like, if you make a headline, it'll look like the same size as your paragraphs with absolutely no spacing before and after. So you start with every Tailwind document from scratch. You have to actually add styles to make things work, which, again, a little advantage to Bootstrap. You actually get a look and feel. You spend a lot of time customizing it, though. So that's an advantage and disadvantage. So you spend, this means that you're going to spend almost no time overwriting things in Tailwind because it doesn't have any styles to begin with. So you have to add them yourself. So you really spend almost zero time overwriting. Also, since there are so many classes, you don't really need to do any overrides. So let's take a look at this. So for example, if you take a look at just the amount of colors, this is just, for example, how you would add a border color. So you would do something like create a border and then give it a color, like say green, and then you give it one of the strengths. So you would say like 500 would be this green right here. And 500 is about the middle of where all the colors are in Tailwind, except for yellow. Yellow, I think a yellow 300 is about the right yellow. Otherwise, this one looks a little bit too orange for me. But you can see that you have, instead of just having BTM primary and secondary, you have okay, pick a color, pick one of these colors, and you have a ton more options. You also have blue, indigo, and purple. I guess people really love kind of bluish colors. So yeah, you don't really spend a lot of time overwriting because there's so many options. And it just has a lot better options than Bootstrap. You know, for example, here is how you specify font weights. So, you know, in Bootstrap, I think you have like bold, maybe now they've added a few more, like you have like the normal bold, bolder, and I think that's it. But this one gives you like a lot, pretty much all the weights that you're going to need for fonts. So I think the options are definitely better in Tailwind, always, because it just has more than in Bootstrap. And then there is this concept of variants in Tailwind CSS. Now, this is one of the features that are super powerful about Tailwinds. And this is probably one of the things that you fall in love with, that you have the ability to modify existing items based on different parameters. So for example, you can modify you know, your elements depending on, for some reason, this is not coming up. So let me try the other link, see if that's working. You can modify the element based on when you hover an item. So if I go over here and I hover over this button, this gives you the different color. And you can see how I build that here. So my button is somewhere down here. And I know this is really kind of scary. Here's how what coding a button is like in Tailwind. It is a ton of classes, but you have these options of creating modifiers for each of the classes. So you have a hover modifier, which says, okay, whenever somebody hovers over this button, go ahead and modify it so that it has a green background. So normally this doesn't have a background. So you can see there's actually more classes, la la la. I'm not sure how many of those are, but that is a ton of classes for just creating a button. But you have the option of modifying how things look when, not just when different events happen, but then also when you have different sizes. So you can say, well, this thing needs to look like this on this size screen, and it needs to look like this on this size screen, by using the concept of variant, which is really awesome. And it makes you just spend a lot of time tweaking and designing in, you know, in your classes, as opposed to, you know, trying to figure out how Bootstrap styled something and then figuring out how you override it with something else. That's usually what I do in Bootstrap. And it also has some, this is a pretty cool class. So it has actually a class, I don't know if you can see it. So the other you know, item here, the other sort of piece of code here has something called a group hover, which is pretty cool. So a group hover means that even though I am rolling over this button right here, when I roll over the container, it's actually modifying the background color of the container. So it's modifying the color essentially of the parent, which will be, I believe, this one. So that's another thing, because there are so many more options, and the options that are responsive, you have a lot of like really cool things that I think Bootstrap now has something kind of similar to this, but the richness of the cool things that you can do in Tailwinds is a lot better. There's just a lot more cool stuff. So you'll really love that. All right, so definitely fine-tune control over just about every element. So if you think about it, it's almost like using the style tag in CSS. You have access to almost everything that you would add a style tag for with Tailwind CSS. At least you have almost everything that you would possibly need for building a normal website already as a class that you can modify in Tailwind CSS. So that means that, and I'll show you an example here. So for example, one of the things that you often do is change the opacity of elements. Well, Tailwinds has this way of doing opacity that allows you to control the opacity of three different things. You can control the overall opacity of the element. You can control the opacity of just the text in the element, or the opacity of just the background. So you can see here that although this opacity class happens to be in the container that has this text in it. So let's see if we can find where this text is, because again, look at the amount of classes, it's sort of crazy. So here's that, like one of these containers. Now, I am saying I just want the color of the background to be 20%. So that should be this one right here. Normally, if you change the opacity of an element, it would just change the opacity of the entire element. So the text would be hard to read, and you have to kind of get around it by maybe adding a span class. Tailwinds is really good at giving you access to different pieces that you might want to change. And it's, I think, definitely built by a designer who has done enough sites that, you know, he has thought through what kind of things you're going to need in most situations. So anyways, pretty awesome. That's one of the things that's pretty cool. Really fine-tune control over a thing. It does have a responsive grid, just like Bootstrap, but it works in a different way. So here I am controlling the size of the text using variants. So you see that we have like a small variant. We're saying normally this is a small piece of text. And then when you are at the small breakpoint, make that medium. When you're at the medium breakpoint, make that large. Maybe I should have made them make a little more sense, but you can see what I'm talking about. And so now when I'm making this font, this window bigger and smaller, you can see that the text actually gets to be different sizes. And because of the fine grain control that I have, I can very, very precisely control what those sizes are going to be. And that's where the large quantity of sizes comes in super handy. I have a lot of room to play with, and there's so many options for sizes that you're really not going to customize any of this or overwrite anything because there's already so many, and they tend to make sense. So pretty awesome. So responsive grid, but whereas in Bootstrap, you're using the grid strictly for layout. Here, you're using it a lot for variants and modifications. It does have access to the Flexbox as well as the grid layout. Grid is a little bit experimental, so they're just getting started with it, but it does give you access to that as well. Now, one thing that it has that Bootstrap doesn't give you is access to properties like the transition property, and also transitions and transformations as well. So if we take a look at that, let's take a look at transitions. So for example, when I hover over these different elements, you can see that I have different curves for how they're showing up. So you do have access to classes that control that, how long something lasts, the type of easing curve that I'm using, and then the transition property itself. You also have control over things like rotation. So there actually is a pretty rich language that allows you to control transitions and transformations directly in Tailwind CSS, which is not something that you can do with Bootstrap. And again, if you add the hover variants or some of the other responsive variants, that makes this framework really cool for building animations. And if you think about it, if you're building an application that is component-based, now you have those things available to you as classes that you can control with variables. And that's actually where Tailwind is the most powerful. Now, it does have some built-in animations. There are not a ton of them. So there are, I think, like 4 or 5 right now. So it does have some built-in animations, but it's kind of nice. Like no animation, spin, bounce is pretty cool, and pulse is pretty cool. So you can take something and make it pulse between 2 different sort of sets of property. I like it. I wish there were more. Hopefully they will add some additional ones. But I like that sort of the ability to do this wasn't something that you would do in Bootstrap. You know, you have a few things that animate in Bootstrap, but not much. All right, so here's maybe a few of the disadvantages. Number one is it's definitely more complicated to configure. You can use the link tab, but you shouldn't because it's so big. Definitely, if you want to play around with it, that's a fantastic option, but you really need to use the configuration. So you can, essentially what you have to configure things in Bootstrap is you can do things like use a config file that allows you to control every item in Tailwind. So you can control the size of the grid, the color of everything by essentially going through this config file and then adding different properties, and then you just modify them. This is also how you can get rid of things you're not using. So like, I don't know, if for some crazy reason you were only using the small size, then you could just delete all the other ones and it wouldn't generate that CSS. And this is actually what makes it useful. The fact that you can configure it makes it super useful. Like I said, it doesn't have any components, sort of. There's a separate project called Tailwind UI. So this is a set of components that the developer has built. So it's essentially the developer has created all those classes for different instances. And you can see that right now it's in preview. It's a little pricey. It costs essentially, I think, $250 for all the different types of components. There are, you can see that there's just a ton of different sort of styles for pieces of layouts that you might want to do. Very, very rich, and they're going to keep on adding some. The pricing, as I mentioned, you can buy, there's like an application UI and a marketing UI, 150 each or 250 for both of them. And this is like an early access, so I'm not sure how that will change. This is how the developer actually makes money and maintains the project. So I think it's pretty worthwhile if you can afford it to get those. There are some open source alternatives. So people are building these yourselves. And then once you start making things, you will have your own kind of versions of the components if you want to. Way too many classes. Man, it just you saw how many classes just to build like a button. Now there is a way to simplify that. So there is a way of creating a class name and then modifying your CSS so that when it reads like BTN, it means all these classes. So you can use it like that, but that's not really the way that people use Tailwind. It's not really, it's maybe frowned upon to use it like that because it's meant to be used with all the classes. That sounds crazy, but it'll make more sense in a minute. But yeah, way too many classes. All right, so this becomes a problem when you are updating repeating elements. So if you have like a layout in your web page and you have like 5 different, 5 different items, in your catalog, if you want to change the color of one of them, you have to go in there and change the colors in every one of them, which if you're not using components, if you're not using something like React and Vue, that really stinks. It's really horrible. It has inactive variants. So not even though it's, I think 2 point whatever it was, 8 megs or something, not everything is turned on. And just imagine if they were to turn everything on for that library, it would be probably, 10 megs or something. So there are inactive variants, and occasionally you'll be trying to do something and the framework isn't doing it. And you're like, I wonder why it's not doing this. And that's because for that particular component or that particular class, some variants have been turned off. So you have to like remember to turn them on. Kind of a pain, but I can see where they had to sort of try to keep the size of the library down a little bit. Let's see. So for that, one of the things that they recommend is using Purge CSS. So Purge CSS lets you essentially analyzes your CSS and gets rid of things that you're not using. And it's pretty cool. And I think it works actually extremely well with Tailwind, because in Tailwind, you're just using a bunch of classes and you don't write classes that are in another file. They're all right there in your documents. So it actually does a really good job of getting rid of the classes that you're not using. It works very well with it. So in reality, when you export this library, it'll be way smaller than Bootstrap. It'll be like 10K or 15K or something like that, because it's going to go through, and because it has a build process, it's going to just get rid of things you're not using. And so therefore, it's only going to output just the CSS that you need. And then you can, minimize it and compress it, and that should give you really tiny sizes, which is actually good. Now, there is what some people call the Tailwind look. I haven't recognized it that much, but I know that Chris Coyer from CSS Tricks says that this site smells like Tailwind CSS. So there is a look, but if you think about it, Bootstrap definitely has like a look. The default Bootstrap look is very recognizable. I think the Tailwind look is a little bit different, and it's pretty modern. And because you end up customizing things more than anything, I think it's a better way to go if you're kind of more design oriented. All right, so get to this part. Which one is the best? So first, I'll say that if you are not using a component-based architecture, so if you're not using something like React or Vue or Svelte or some other component-based framework, Bootstrap for sure. Like I would totally go to Bootstrap. If I'm building a website that has a lot of repeating elements, I would not want to sit there and write and modify those classes over and over. So Bootstrap, if you just want to get something done quickly, if you just want to scaffold something very fast and not have to worry about like, think about it. Bootstrap developers love Bootstrap because they get something that works pretty well, and then the designers can kind of take it over and customize it. If you were to give a developer, like a pure developer, a site with Tailwind, everything would look like it's 16 point, Helvetica or sans serif. So they probably would have a harder time kind of doing something with it. So Bootstrap is definitely better for speed. Now, CSS components or component-based architectures like Vue, React, and all those, Tailwind, way better, way better, much smaller. It has, the ability to modify elements just with classes is just made for component-based architectures. So I would definitely, if I was using something like Vue or React, I would definitely go for Tailwind. So that is mostly what I think about them. However, if I had to pick a winner, if I had to say which one would I pick for right now, I would say Bootstrap takes the win, just because it's simpler. And I tend to sort of always think that simpler things are better, or simpler things are more accepted. So that I think that there's going to be a kind of bifurcation of how people use these things. They're going to reach for something like Tailwind because it is really made for components, and people who are just designing simple pages, maybe something like Bootstrap would be a lot better. So, and I just have a look at that, 30 minutes. That's perfect. So if you want more information, you can go to this link if you want to take a look at my Tailwind's CSS course. I made that, if you follow me, I made it free for 24 hours. So you should have gotten a notice, especially if you signed up for this, this live stream. If you were on the page, then you got a notice. Or if you follow me, there should be a notice somewhere. If not, I think you can still follow me and you might be able to see it. So that's a benefit to following me. Also, if you want to check out my Bootstrap course, it's still for Bootstrap 4. I am working on the Bootstrap 5 version of that course, but there's the link to the Bootstrap course. And here is the link for LinkedIn followers of the post that I made. Like, if you want to get to the post, I don't know if I can make that bigger, but yeah, if you want to look at the post, you could just follow me and you should see the post. Just look for my posts, and you can see the link to just the free 24-hour release of the Tailwind. So I would love to. I'm going to scroll through a bunch of questions and see if there's anything that I can answer. This is so exciting. There's like a lot of people here. So hello there. Let's see. What's up, everyone? Nice to see you, Doug. Okay. Hello from Kenya. Hello, Cyrus. Renee, hello. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and I will be super excited and happy to answer them. I love this kind of interactive version. Also, let me know if you're interested in me doing some more of these. I try to make this one a little bit more informative, more than just, hey, go watch my course that I just released. Hopefully you got a good idea of the differences between the two. I debated whether or not I should put on the Bootstrap shirt because I would maybe give away that I was going to pick Bootstrap. But I picked it up at the very last minute. So let's see, Canada, UK, Milwaukee. Hope you're warming up. I'm in Florida. It's 85 over here. It's ridiculous. Hello from Egypt. Colombia. I'm Panamanian, or I was born in Panama. So Colombia is sort of our sister country where we all originated from. Bangladesh, Vancouver, Sacramento, Colombia again. A couple of Colombia. Hello, and then there's I don't know what these are from Nepal. I don't know what those are. Please, nothing bad, but yeah, cool. Italy, wow, that's awesome. Second last name is Greco, so buongiorno. I don't even know if it's morning over there, but let's see. All right, I do wish libraries would namespace their classes like TW. Yeah, that's going to be one of the changes in Bootstrap 5. The classes are a little bit better named. I think Tailwind generally tries to go for class names that make sense. So class names that have their counterparts in regular style elements. So that's why they're named like they are. Yes, I do wish their names were shorter. But I think the reason they're trying to keep them the the way they are is because they're trying to make them something that you could easily remember. Like if you're trying to look for a font weight, you can see that they're just like the font weight names, light, black, bold, that. So it tends to make a little bit of a sense. Compared to Foundation, so Foundation is pretty similar to Bootstrap, but it actually gives you a lot more features. There was a period of time where there was a huge sort of like framework fight between Bootstrap and Foundation. I think that honestly, I thought Foundation was better, but again, I think that simpler always wins. And the fact that Bootstrap was simpler, it had less pieces to it. So it would be the same sort of similarities. Like I would say, if you want to use something that can just get you the site 90% of the way, Bootstrap and Foundation for sure. If you're building with components, Tailwind CSS way superior, way superior. And that's why it's so popular nowadays. So let's see, Tailwind kind of strips. Yes, it's ridiculous. If you go to a CodePen and load up that link to the CSS from Tailwind and try to create a couple of headlines, you'll see that everything is the same size. It gets rid of everything. So whereas something like Bootstrap has essentially what's like a normalized kind of CSS, and technically like a normalized CSS, tries to make things look similar in different browsers. It gets rid of any non-standard like positions and widths of things. And sets the box model to like a standard. Tailwind just wipes everything out. So you end up with just like super plain looking CSS. So you really have to add things. And I think if you want sort of you can very quickly overwrite that. And if you do want like default headline styles, then I think that there is a way in which you can customize the library that you essentially say, okay, here's all the classes that my headline is going to have. And that way you don't have to write all that crazy amount of code. So I think that that option in Tailwind is really good. And a lot of people are super concerned about the crazy amount of classes. But honestly, if I actually had to build something, I would rather build something with Tailwind, because I really don't like having to override all of Bootstrap's things. And so then I end up going to like a SaaS version of Bootstrap, but then I'm almost like all the way there, in the same place as something like Tailwind. So I'm already having to create a build tool. This is post CSS, so it's very easy to use. So yes, that is something that you have to do, but it ends up being better. Again, it's like the first time you try it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a horrible thing. Why are they doing this? But as you get used to it, you're like, okay, this is actually much better. I really like it. And you start kind of thinking of how you're going to design the thing. And you don't have to go to multiple files. Like you don't have to edit your HTML at a class and then go into your CSS and modify the class. And then what ends up happening with most things is not just that you're overwriting Bootstrap. A lot of times you're just overwriting yourself. Like you wrote a class somewhere else that is related to the new class, or perhaps you have something afterwards that is actually overwriting the class that you're writing, and it just becomes like an overwriting nightmare. This gets rid of all that. You just, in every component that you're building, you're just thinking about the design and then also the responsiveness and then the interaction with the different variants for hovers and things like that. So that's a great question. Let's see, quite nice. Definitely true. Very nice to have that much control. Really, I'm telling you, try it. You will like it, except for, so for this course, I had to build things in CodePen. And whenever I was designing it, I didn't have like a component architecture there. So I didn't have like Vue or React. I was just literally designing how the things looked. And that meant that I had to, whenever I made a change, I had to make that change like in 20 places, because there was just 20 different items that I was showing. So that part was a pain. So if I was doing component based, that would go away. So yeah, having many classes. Yeah, that is always a concern with people, having too many classes on one element. But again, when you if you think about, I thought about this recently, like if you think about what CSS is doing, if you look at the inspector and you take a look at your CSS, what's happening is that there is like this huge cascade of the styles that it's applying. And then you can go into, if you inspect any kind of project, you have this tab called Compute It. right? So you have this computer tab with all the styles that after it goes through everything that you have created, this is what's actually being applied. So think of Tailwind like that. You're actually just applying the thing that you want. You don't have to worry about what the parent and the parent's parent and am I inside this component and what's happening in here versus you're actually just very expressively designing the thing that you're doing. So you don't have to worry about things conflicting with each other. That part of CSS is really a pain. I've spent hours trying to figure out where the class and that is affecting something, and then you end up using like the important classes. So this almost gives you like a pure style tag, but that is defined somewhere so that you have some control programmatically over how to do it. So I think it ends up being a lot better. So it seems like Tailwind will be dangerous of the design challenge. Yeah, you may be. Let's see how if I was working with like a team where there was like a definite developer and a designer. Yeah, I think if you create, I mean, I think that the way you would solve that is by, there are some like single link libraries that will give you a look and feel. Like it's almost like another link tag that gives you a predefined, look and feel. So that's what I would do. If I was working on a team, I would have my designers creating, like maybe with Storybook, creating like a look and feel for how things work. And then it would work a lot more like Bootstrap. But then for components, you want that ability to come in and tweak it a little bit. So in a way, I think it's a little bit more flexible. And I think that if you gave it to just a pure developer, they would be like, what the heck is this? None of this is working or doing anything. So, but I do think that it's actually for any sort of component-based world, I would totally go for it instead. So super. I'm a fan of, somebody's a fan of me. I'm a fan of all of you guys. I really love that I have this job where I can like really help people out. It's one of my joys in life that I get to have a super cool job. Let's see, been on my radar, always prefer to write semantic CSS. Yeah, this is a big sort of thing about Tailwind. And it requires a little bit of a mind shift. Semantic CSS is that definition that, when you have a, say that you have a card, you're supposed to put a container class for that called card. And then if you have a card headline, then you have a class called card headline. The problem is all that overwriting of stuff. So if you have a card that is a different looking card than your original card definition, now you have to have like a variant of the original card, the original card that ends up being more generic, and then different variants of the card. And you end up building yourself like a bootstrap, in other words. Whereas in here, you're always, every component has in it how the component looks, which is better. It's really better for components, but it does take a while to get used to it. I think that that's one of the shifts that the guy who created Tailwind made, and he has his fantastic article. I will try to post it somewhere, but there's a fantastic article about his mind shift coming from exactly like a semantic HTML structure into the way that he's doing things now. So yes, I think you'll like it. I mean, definitely something that takes a little bit of adjustment to do. So as long as the classes don't conflict. So this is a reply to somebody else. Yes, definitely. If the site has a lot of components, if it has any components, honestly, like if you have components, definitely Tailwind. But if, again, like Bootstrap gives you a lot more than just CSS. It does give you a lot of interactivity. So that's why I think like, if you just want to get something done quickly, definitely Bootstrap. Perhaps like if you have everybody knows, I would say everybody knows Bootstrap, but it's the most popular framework in the world. So I think that for a while, you will still have a lot of people just reach for it, and it's comfort food. Tailwind is way better if you are doing any sort of components-based architecture. So cool. There's a lot of other very nice comments. Yes, so somebody's asking, will it be available as I'm so sorry about your snow. Send me some of that cold weather to Florida. We are burning up today. Actually, tomorrow it'll be back in, Florida's weird. Tomorrow it'll be back in the 60s. So there's after this is done, this will get recorded, and I have a YouTube channel. It's Planet of the Web, so you can follow me there if you want to. It's an easier place to find it, but I think it does. If you signed up for the live stream, it'll also put it on that page with the live stream. Or just send me a note and I'll tell you where the links are. So I think it's youtube.com/Planet of the Web. I'm like Planet of the Web just about everywhere. So that's what my little icon is for my handle. So awesome. Sorry about the snow. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. This is a good question. The issue with semantic CSS is they can be rigid. Yes, very rigid. And then, man, you just spend all your time not just overwriting, but when you run into one of those issues where you're trying to overwrite something and you don't know where the original is coming from, and then you go into danger mode when you start using like all the important tags to try to, it's just a mess. I mean, the way that the newer Bootstrap is written, it's actually nice that most of the classes are inherit classes. So you can go to like a parent component, modify it and change it. That works pretty well, but still you're always like fighting yourself. You end up doing some classes and then you end up writing something to overwrite something about the classes. It's almost like the difference between, as I mentioned, like the difference between when you go to inspect and you see like the, sort of the order of all the CSS in which it was added and going directly to the actual CSS that is used to display that thing. With Tailwind, you're essentially writing just the CSS that's going to be displayed, ignoring everything before it. And it ends up being, I think, a faster way of writing your code. So if you created a storybook, okay, so, or pattern lab class, which would you use and why? You know, I like Storybook. I've been thinking about using it. I'm going to be redoing my SAS Essential Training course. I haven't used Pattern Lab, so perhaps send me a link and I'll check it out. I haven't heard about it, but I think Storybooks is really cool because then you can have a designer create like essentially a style guide that is interactive and then the developers can use. So it looks like a really interesting workflow. So the Tailwind course, yeah. So I think it's right in the screen right now. So this Go link right here, go.rayvo.org/39SS, capital SS. That will take you to the Tailwind course. And then this link right here, so it's like go.rayvo.org/39SK, capital S, lowercase k, takes you to the post where I give you access for free for 24 hours. So that is awesome. Man, okay. Tailwind or Bootstrap? Both. Dang it. I still love Bootstrap. I really do. But I am really loving Tailwind. Like I as I mentioned, I like doing things in Tailwind better because you just don't override like ever. You just, expressively define what the thing looks like and then you're done. You don't have to worry about, oh, now this is going to affect, now I need to override the internal paragraph that I created here, or this paragraph has like 6 dependencies with earlier paragraphs that I did, so now I need to override that. Yes. Robert Young profile picture. Oh, I don't know what that is. Okay, let's see. Oh, that must be somebody else's profile picture. Canwell's. Yeah, I am both excited and scared of doing Bootstrap. If you look at this Tailwind course, this Tailwind CSS course has a new sort of way of doing things that I'm prototyping. So let's see, if you go to rayvo.org/slides Tailwind. So one thing that I'm doing in my courses, and in I did the Vue 3 course like this and the Tailwind CSS course. So these are the slides that I use when I'm going through the course. But in addition to that, I have now this sort of application that lets you go to any slide. Actually, I have been doing this part for a while. But what I added now is that you also have access to this cool microsite. So essentially all the notes that I'm reading, that I'm using while I'm recording the course are now accessible in a microsite like this. And this also has links to practice kind of code pens. So if you click on, I don't even know what this is, but if you click on this, it'll take you, that's what I've been showing you. It takes you to a page with code pen where you can take a look at the code and kind of mess around with it. So this is the transforms. and you can play around with it yourself. So that's one of the big changes that I made in my courses, the way that I am approaching them by giving you access to the slides, the markdown that I not necessarily read from, because I write a lot of stuff, but then I just it's sort of more to like orient my mind as to what I'm going to be talking about. And then I normally just ignore it. And I mean, I cover the same things, but yeah, sometimes I stop recording and I go, okay, just read the thing. Like, took you 5 hours or whatever to write all this text. Like, why don't you just read it? That's just me when I'm frustrated. So I'm giving you this extra microsite. Also, the Tailwinds course has about, I want to say, almost 280 different little practice code pens that you can go in and play around with Tailwind yourself. So I'm going to do the same thing for Bootstrap. And so, but I'm terrified because Bootstrap is way bigger, I think, than Tailwinds. At least it seems way bigger because of all the components. I don't know. I'm terrified because it's just a very big course. I mean, I think the Tailwind course is about 3 hours long, and it's made to be almost like a reference. So, you know, if you want to just look at something, you can go check it out. And then there's like a little practice example of working with it, so you can see how you actually do it. You know, in Bootstrap is going to be like that, but so I have to create, I don't know how many examples I'm going to end up creating for Bootstrap, but Tailwind was like almost 280. That's a lot of code pens to create for a course. So I'll have to see, but I think it's really worthwhile because you can, you know, instead of having to like install your own thing, you could just click on a link, go play with it. And I think you learn more from modifying something than from just hearing me talk about how to do something. So hopefully you guys like that. Go check out the course, Tailwind, and I think the Vue 3 Essential Training and Tailwind's Essential Training are 2 courses where I'm testing that out. And I'm going to be doing it with more courses, especially if people really like it. So overwriting, I like that. This is a great comment. Overwriting is part of the elegance of CSS. Yes, I agree. You know, except for when you lose something, you lose track of something. Like oh man. Have you ever done that? Like, you know, Ted, like you lost track of where you're supposed to override something. You know, I think that you give it a try. I think you might enjoy it after a while, but definitely not unless it's a component-based structure. And especially for something like Vue and React, it's a dream because you can actually create animations by just modifying classes easily, like change the rotation, change everything. Okay, cool. Let's see. My company uses Foundation, and I always feel like I'm reinventing the wheel with any new page design that comes down. Yeah, that's why I think a workflow like Storybook and perhaps Tailwind or something else where you get to sort of define what the site looks like and then just ship out, you know, link tags to kind of your own version of Bootstrap, and maybe taking a look at some of the pre-built components. I mean, this is definitely for advanced users. And because of that, I think that they will find it a lot more useful. Yeah, I think that for me with Bootstrap especially, it's like always just, okay, this is great. I got the site up, you know, now I need to go and make it look nice. And then I spent writing a pretty substantial, you know, style sheet just for making it look how I want it to look, because dang it, Bootstrap doesn't have that. Like, it doesn't have a sans serif font. Come on, Bootstrap. I think maybe the new version does, but that's really annoying that I have to always switch out the fonts to like a sans serif font and just download a font and stuff. I found a channel of RayVeal logos, the planet of the web. So it's like, if you look at youtube.com, so it should be like youtube.com/planet of the web. I think actually, yeah. So at some point, YouTube would let you put in like a name and like a custom name. And at some point they changed it. So if you just go to youtube.com/planet of the web, that'll work, but it'll actually redirect you to youtube.com/c/RayVeal 0. Okay, whatever, YouTube, get with it. So yes, let's see. So let's see. Would the Bootstrap SaaS course only be relevant to the Bootstrap 4 course, or would also apply to the new one you were working on? So I love Bootstrap SaaS. You know, I want to do another course with Bootstrap SaaS because it is the way to make Bootstrap way better. If you like Bootstrap, you should learn the SaaS version of it. it just makes it much better to customize things and control everything. So it would be, I guess, so I should actually show the question. So I think that Bootstrap SaaS would definitely just be relevant to the Bootstrap 4 course. So at some point, I do want to upgrade that one. I just have like a long list of things that on my list of things to work on. And I know that that's not one that's coming up immediately. So my next few things are going to be Bootstrap 5, 2 of them. And then I have some other stuff that I can't even remember. The microsite companion to your Lillicosis is really cool. Yep. Yeah, so those, the microsites that I'm talking about are essentially part of a framework that I built called RayVeal. So there's a framework called RayVeal.js, and I made my own called RayVeal because why not? I think it sounds like I'm eating like some sort of beef. But this is what the framework looks like. It's very similar to what you're looking at. And it's sort of like a customized version of RayVeal, which is a fantastic framework. The difference for me is that I am assuming that you are using multiple, you're writing like almost like a book. You're writing a lot of different, videos in my case. And I write everything in Markdown, so it's very easy to write. And I focus, when I'm building something, I focus just on the writing, not on the design of the thing. So there's like a persistent toolbar navigation at the bottom. You can see it kind of, actually, I would have to hide the question here. So you can see that it has like a little navigation at the bottom that appears and disappears with a key. And this is how you do that. And then it assumes that you're going to do multiple documents. And you can see the notes, the author notes, either as you're presenting. So that's actually part of RayVeal. And some differences that fragments are on by default. I import some icon libraries, and I import a lot of things. Like also, it has code built in with syntax highlighted code. So you'll see me do this in my projects. Like I can go in there and actually kind of show you, modify the code blocks. But then RayVeal.js, the new version, has this cool feature where it highlights line numbers, which is awesome, which is what I'm doing here. And then you can have an embedded code pen if you want to. So also tables look like this, charts. You can actually, I'm rebuilding a new version of this, and the new one is not going to have charts, but this version of it has charts, so that's cool. And then you have a bunch of layouts that you can create. So here's a layout with an icon. Here's a layout with like, this is just bullet points that say 1, 2, 3, 4, but it makes it look like circles. And I have a ton of other like video layouts, sidebar layouts, quote layouts, you name it. I have a lot of features on this thing. And this is how I build my courses. And in the new, not in this version that is on this RayVeal.tech site, but in the version that I've been prototyping, that is going to be eventually version 3 of this thing, I'm going to make a lot of changes. One of them is that I've added this microsite that as I build my notes, it actually builds the slideshow as well as the, as well as the website. And there's actually a tutorial in my YouTube channel about how to set it up and how to use it. So it's an open source project, so go check it out. It's pretty cool. It's at RayVeal.tech, RayVeal.tech. So let's see, the app with the notes and course stuff is it is a good idea. Patting myself, pats himself. Yeah, and I think that if you're making a lot of presentations, I've been using this thing for years. And I think it's one of the things that I'll be working on is I want to just have GitHub host the whole thing, so that right now it's a little bit complex to create it because you have to, fork the repo, then you have to like download the files, you have to start the npm process. It's a little programmy. So in this next version, I'm hoping to just make it so that you just edit everything in GitHub, and then it just builds I use like a GitHub action to actually just build the slideshow. And then all you have to do is just edit your, just edit the markdown files, create new markdown files, and it'll just build both an application and also the little microsite, which will be pretty cool. It's one of my fun side projects. So let's see. Starting to see more and more. I should be putting these on. Starting to see more and more. Tailwind stays looking still. Yes, that's true. Yes. Yeah, totally a critique against Bootstrap. And I can't really tell them as well. I think it's because they have such kind of a straight up modern look to them that it doesn't bother me. We're going over a little bit of time, so thank you for coming. But I'll keep on answering questions as long as I see them in the chat. So thank you for asking questions. That just makes it a lot more fun. Yeah, I've noticed, like, definitely Chris Coyier will often say, like, oh, this site smells like Tailwind. I can't really tell that much because I think they look pretty good. But yeah, but again, just like with Bootstrap, you do have the option of customizing it. But I think that because Tailwind is meant to be optimized by default, it should be easier to make it look different. Like if you look at the way that you actually override a lot of the features, it's actually a lot simpler, and you're just going to each individual either component, or if you are using it in the component architecture, it's easier to customize. However, people just always use the standard. So I think it looks fantastic. So I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, so github.com, Planet of the Web is where you find me on GitHub. Let's see, Nick says, yeah, that's true. I've seen a lot of, sites where it's not obvious. I mean, I think that it used to be a problem, like back in version 2 and 3, you would just hit a site and you go, oh my gosh, this is a Bootstrap default site. Nobody did anything to this. I think it's gotten a lot better. I think the more modernly look, the less obvious they are, and I think the better it is. So I don't think that that's the case so much. I like the way Bootstrap looks now and the way that Bootstrap 5 looks. They've made a few tweaks that I think make it look a lot better. So I don't really have a problem with that. So let's see. Oh, okay. So yeah, exactly. If you want to, like, I am Planet of the Web just about everywhere. So in GitHub, it's like github.com/planet of the web. And LinkedIn is like LinkedIn/in/planet of the web. And then just about anywhere. Like I usually try to go grab the URL at whatever social network I go to. So how cool. I'm glad you like RayVeal.tech. So hopefully, and again, look for the video on my YouTube channel on how to set it up and use it. There's a lot of really cool features that I'm planning. And that RayVeal tech doesn't yet have the microsite feature. So as it is customary, we web people like to tweak things. So just the other day, Morten Rand Hendrickson, my friend that's also an author, and I were talking about Vite, which is like Snowpack, but I think a little bit better. And so in the last couple of days, I decided to just switch the whole thing to use, I don't know if you call it Vite or Vite or whatever. But I'm using that as the build tool. So I'm learning how to use that. And I really like it, but it was, I had to like go from, I was using Gulp.js, and then I moved it to Snowpack for a while. And then when Morten talked to me about Vite, I said, let's check this out. It actually was a really easy switch between Snowpack and Vite. So, and I think it's really, really nice because Snowpack is a little bit, I am so nerding out right now. Snowpack was like a little bit ambiguous about the build process, where Vite is like a little more opinionated. So sometimes that's actually pretty useful. You don't have to do as much config. It just uses rollup, I think, for the build process, which is like fine. Like sometimes I just want to build something. I don't want to worry about, I'm not a fan of the Webpack. It's always been very confusing to me. It's not like a lot of fun. So yes. Maybe a Lobos you might like, I don't know what this means, but locomotive scroll. Okay, so yeah, look, they send me a project. So yeah, cool. Thanks for, you know what? Send me messages if you notice things. As you know, like if you follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I actually created a page called on LinkedIn called raybo.org. That's like my blog website that I almost never update. So if you go to LinkedIn, I post 2 things that I find very useful to me personally every day on this page called raybo.org. So if you subscribe to that page, come on. I usually post it and then I mention it in a mention. So yeah, if you follow this, then you'll get my cool updates. Like for example, today I posted about these crazy people that invented battery powered by human heat, a la The Matrix. That's crazy. And then this thing about creating metahumans from Unreal, that's going to be pretty cool. So I always kind of post 2 things a day about things that I think are pretty awesome. So make sure you follow that if you want to. And Morton is also my favorite instructor, other than I would say myself. But it's funny. Like I always, whenever I forget something, I always go watch my own course, because like I forgot whatever I was doing. So I would say I'm probably my #1 fan in terms of watching courses. So yeah, maybe this is the RayVeal link. I don't know. Just go to my YouTube channel, or I can post about it if you have any questions. So cool. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the questions. Hopefully this was fun. Comment and let me know. I would love to do some more. I think I'm always going to try to make it something not just like I released a course, but something that is a little bit more practical, just because I enjoy that sort of thing, and I really appreciate the conversations. So make sure you, I'm everywhere, so just send me notes, and I appreciate you guys commenting, and I will talk to you guys later. And now I think I will play my intro as the outro, because it was very fun. So watch your ears, here it comes.